name's Tad Nakamura, and director of A Song for Ourselves, which is a half-hour film on the life and music of Chrissy Jima, who was one of the pioneering musicians during the Asian American movement during the late 1960s and early 1970s. I think, well, just Chrissy Jima himself is really inspiring, and I I I felt that one, I think the Asian American movement needs to be documented, and there's just so many stories within that time frame that are really need to be told. That Chrissy Jima is kind of just one aspect, specifically of the cultural work that was going on, the music, the films, the graphics that just kind of really exploded during the Asian American movement. And another thing too is I personally I was lucky enough to know Chrissy Jima on a personal level, and he was a big influence and kind of hero. And I felt I was very lucky to be able to kind of benefit from conversations with Chris, and kind of to absorb his knowledge and wisdom. And I felt like, I kind of wanted to make that knowledge and more accessible to other people who weren't as lucky as me to know him personally. Well, I think that the most intriguing and interesting was I was able to find out how Chrissy Jima as a person was able to evolve at the different stages of his life. And so I think it was because usually, I think when you talk about early musicians, especially during the late 60s, so either like, musical success, and then like drug abuse, and then like the downfall and maybe a comeback, like all the VH1 behind the music stuff. But for Chris, actually, it was the music was just the start, and then he eventually became a middle school and elementary school teacher, and then eventually just went to law school and became a law professor. And during that whole time, he was able to be married and raise a family. So I think it was interesting to see him evolve and keep up the challenges in life, and kind of do different work, but at the same time the purpose behind it in terms of creating change, that was consistent throughout that. So I think that was the most interesting, to actually see an example of someone who was able to continue working for social change and working for community, but in being able to evolve into whether it's law school or playing the guitar. I think the one thing that kind of still ringing in my ears, that he's real adamant about explaining that the initial Asian American movement, it wasn't just about being Asian and necessarily having pride in being Asian or your ethnicity. I mean, that was part of it, but it was much beyond that, where the word Asian American was a very politically charged term, and so it was more about kind of your world outlook, having a political analysis and a specific progressive perspective on many things. And I think that's something that kind of has changed now, where Asian America, I think the word Asian American now can be pretty broad, where it could just be representation, and it could necessarily just be because you're Asian or you're Asian American, not necessarily tied with the politics or progressive politics. And I think that's what really struck me, and kind of the biggest lesson I think I learned from Chris was that at least the roots of what is now Asian America is rooted in political analysis, and rooted in kind of community development and social change. I was actually talking to a filmmaker last night, and we're talking about the differences between like a narrative and documentary. And actually, it's a well-known filmmaker, Valerie So, and she was explaining how with documentary, it's really creatively, it's figuring out what to take out, versus I think narrative in writing a fictional script, it's kind of use your creativity of what to add. So anyway, the process for me at least is to do the interviews and kind of just ask a gamut of questions, and then from there try to find out where the story is. It was definitely kind of not knowing what's out there, just kind of shooting interviews with people and trying to get all the facts, and then from there trying to select what to include and where that storyline, because a half an hour is pretty short to tell someone's whole life story, and especially someone as phenomenal as Chris Ujima. So it was definitely a long process. The editing process, which is the hardest, I think, to figure out what to include and what not to include.